My name is Joe McNamara. I'm chairman of the Rhode Island Democratic Party and a state representative from District 19. Democrats Discuss is our newly enacted program which gives the citizens of the state of Rhode Island a chance to find out what Democratic office holders and supporters are up to in terms of policies that affect us all throughout the state. And today, I am extremely pleased to have one of Rhode Island's most influential leaders, Nicholas A. Mattiello, Speaker of the Rhode Island House of Representatives. Speaker Mattiello is a graduate of Boston College, right up the street from my alma mater, BU, and also has a Juris Doctorate from Suffolk University and is an attorney in private practice. He was first elected in 2007, representing Weston, Cranston, and part of Garden City as well, Speaker?
Not Garden City, Joe.
Not Garden City?
Well, Weston, Cranston, Garden Hills area.
The Garden Hills area. In 2010, he was elected majority leader, and then in 2014 became Speaker of the House. Speaker, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. And overall, how has your speakership been?
Oh, it's been great. It's not a job you necessarily plan on having someday, but I can tell you it's the best job in the world. I love it. I love serving my colleagues and working with my colleagues in the House of Representatives, one of the greatest political institutions in the world. I love serving the public. So it's an honor for me to do, and I enjoy making a difference, so it's great.
Speaker, I know a lot of our viewers are very excited to have you here, so we're going to get right into some very interesting questions. Last year was an amazing year for many reasons, but having been in the Rhode Island House of Representatives for 20 years, I've been through many, many budgets, and this year was exceptional in two areas. One, I didn't have to pack my sleeping bag going to the State House. It wasn't an all-nighter. I believe it was passed in record time. And two, it's the first time I can remember a state budget passing unanimously. Unheard of. Two very amazing events and just a lot of consensus, and certainly that's attributed to your leadership. Could you mention to the viewers, how did that happen? How did you achieve that consensus?
Well, I can tell you this, Joe. It was great being done with the budget, having realized that we completed the budget, we passed it unanimously, and it was still daylight as I was having a cup of coffee in the House lounge, so I almost didn't know what to do with myself. But I would say that we were able to pass that because of the hard work of all of our colleagues in the House, in the Senate, and the governor, right? We had 3 Democratic caucuses. We talked to all of the House members. We got great ideas from them. We've all been concentrating on jobs and the economy. That's been my mantra since I was elected Speaker. The House members are great. They put forth great ideas. We collaborated. So we had a lot of consensus in the House, both amongst our Democratic colleagues and our Republican colleagues. We work closely with the Republican caucus. We listen to their ideas. We work very closely with the governor's office and the Senate president. So by the time the budget hit the floor, I'm proud of the budget. It was a great budget. It's pro-jobs, pro the economy, and everybody was on board. So it went through a little quicker than I had anticipated, and I was very pleased and very happy. I had to find some fillers for the time we had left in the evening.
Oh, well, that makes 2 of us. I'm very, very pleased, as were my constituents and the feedback that we received from this year's budget. Speaker, you mentioned caucuses. Some of our viewers may be unfamiliar with the caucusing process. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit, please?
It's a group of people getting together with a common goal. Our Democratic caucus are our Democratic colleagues in the House getting together. The Republicans do the same thing. They hold their Republican caucus where all the Republicans get together. and we use it as an opportunity to discuss ideas, discuss bills, discuss budget challenges, and figure out as a group how we want to move forward. And leadership plays a role in that, and all of our colleagues come together. We work hard, we put forth ideas, and collaboratively, I think we do a very good job. I'm very honored and pleased to work with all of my colleagues in the House.
I received a lot of positive feedback on this year's budget. Speaker, could you just go through some of the highlights of the budget that we enacted?
I'm very proud of the budget, as I've indicated, Joe. Very pro-jobs, pro-economy. We built on what we did last year. One of my big initiatives was to exempt many filers from paying Social Security tax. And I know there's a lot of constituents out there that are very pleased with that. We're going to help keep elderly Rhode Islanders in the state of Rhode Island that they love, that they've worked in, that they've dedicated themselves to their entire lives. We've lowered the corporate minimum tax from $500 to $450. We're now in between Massachusetts and Connecticut, which is where I always believe we need to be. Regionally, we need to be competitive. We eliminated sales tax on utilities for businesses. We're getting a lot of positive feedback on that. That'll be a shot in the arm for our small businesses and our large businesses, in fact. We created a jobs incentive program, Joe Shikachi's bill. We incorporated that into the budget, and that's going to lower tax rates for businesses that are committed to creating jobs in Rhode Island. We worked with the governor and created tools and incentives for real estate development to develop the I-195 land. So it was a budget with incentives that it's going to help our economy, and I'm very pleased and proud of what we did. And I got to tell you, Joe, I hear every day, if I don't hear from 6 people, I don't hear from one, that we're doing a good job and they're pleased with the direction the state is going in. And if you look at our unemployment rate, we went from when I became Speaker, worst in the country, we're now 15th. And I'm not pleased with that, but for the positive movement, we're going to continue to improve that.
And Speaker, as a former small business owner of Joe's Dairy Shop on Warwick Avenue, that electricity reduction and elimination of that tax is phenomenal. Many of our viewers don't understand that the cost of electricity and running a small business, and I'll use a small ice cream, soft serve, and yogurt shop as an example. My electric bills a decade ago were over $2,000 a month with the floodlights, 8 compressors going. That's a lot of ice cream cones and frozen lemonade. So I realize how that impacts small businesses, and that's great. And yesterday, I received a letter from an 80-year-old constituent, told me she was driving a 1997 Chevy and was concerned about living on a fixed income. And I was just so pleased to return her letter and let her know that she would not be receiving tax on her Social Security. But Speaker, your mantra has been jobs and economic development. As a retired educator, I am thrilled about some of the initiatives that were in this budget for education. Could you expound on those a little bit, please?
I'll be happy to, Joe. First, let me say that education is going to be one of our foundations for the future. We need a well-educated, well-trained workforce, and education just makes us a better society. In the past several years, we fully funded the new education funding formula. This year, we added an additional $36 million for that formula, fully funded it once again. That goes directly to education, so I'm very pleased that we were able to do that in difficult financial times. We lifted the school moratorium. I visited many schools in this past year, and some of the conditions are deplorable. Quite frankly, sometimes they're embarrassing, they're inappropriate for children, and you can't learn unless you're in the proper environment, and you certainly don't want. Some of the things I saw were quite frankly unhealthy. So we lifted the moratorium. We included an additional $20 million for repairs and new construction. So we're continuously investing in education, which I think is vital for the future of the state and for our economy. So I'm very pleased with what we were able to do for education.
I am also very pleased. I mean, our schools have to be safe and secure for meaningful learning to take place, and certainly our initiative with full-day kindergarten as well is money well spent. Speaker, lately, you mentioned the economy earlier. I've heard reports, and everything seems very positive. Do you have any observations relating to that, where our economy is headed?
Our economy is moving in the right direction. I was very pleased to read Len Ladaro's op-ed piece a few weeks back in the Providence Journal, where he indicated that June's economic indicators, have been the best they've been in years, and that it appears that our economy is improving at a more rapid rate than ever before, and that we're heading in the right direction. Momentum is with Rhode Island, is with our economy. It has been for a while. I think we started that with our last budget, not this year's budget, the budget before, where we reduced the corporate tax rate from 9 to 7%, and we did a lot of other pro-business things. We reduced the exemption, or raised the exemption on the estate tax from $900,000 to $1.5 million, got rid of the cliff. So we showed last year, in last year's budget, that we're moving to improve the economy. This year we followed up on that with an even better budget, and we continuously move forward. So what the work we're doing in the General Assembly is bearing fruit and results in the economy. And as I've indicated, our economic indicators are better, and our unemployment rate increased or improved from last place to 15. So that's a lot of improvement in a relatively short period of time. We have a lot of work to do, and we're going to continue to do the work. I'm pleased that we're moving in the right direction.
And I know I received a lot of feedback to eliminating that fiscal cliff in the inheritance tax. Between that and Social Security, people, retirees that I know, Mr. Speaker, are saying, well, you know, I was thinking about moving to Florida and legally establishing my residence in Florida, which is 6 months and a day. However, I'm rethinking that now with the new inheritance tax. And was it 1.5 million now, Mr. Speaker?
It is.
So 1.5 million when, you know, we were kids and we were much younger, seemed like a lot of money. But if you take someone today that has a home, some savings, maybe a residence in Florida, there are many Rhode Islanders that can hit that threshold fairly quickly. So I have heard nothing but positive feedback on those two elements that we have changed that will help keep Rhode Islanders right here.
Absolutely, Joe. And relative to the estate tax, I'm very pleased with the work we did. I would have liked to go even higher with the exemption, but as you know, we have to balance our budget, and that's as far as we could go last year. That's something that I think we need to revisit in the near future, possibly in our next budget. I get a lot of positive feedback. We have to raise that exemption even higher. It doesn't matter if you fall into that group or not. Rhode Islanders as a whole, we want to keep well-to-do people in Rhode Island in their later years. We want the philanthropy, we want the investment, we want the spending. You don't want people to leave after a successful life to go to other places. We don't net that much from that tax. You can't predict when people are going to die. So you want those folks to stay in the state. You want to incentivize them to stay. And if I may add, that lowering the corporate tax rate from 9 to 7% made our businesses, our national businesses in Rhode Island, much more competitive, and that enables them to stay and to bring new products and new business into Rhode Island so that jobs can ultimately be increased. So that's borne some fruit that we don't even necessarily see in companies staying and increasing their workforce right now.
And I think also what is important with those is it changes the perception of our state for businesses that are outside the state and thinking about doing business. And talking about doing business, Mr. Speaker, one of the things that citizens and businesses rely on is transportation. Last winter was a tough winter. I know I had a ton of potholes in my neighborhood. My alignment had to be reset again, and many Rhode Islanders just complaining about the roads. There are currently some initiatives that are being discussed about improving not only our roads, but repairing our bridges and the infrastructure that is vital to commerce in this state. What are your thoughts on that?
All right. My first thoughts are that you're absolutely correct. We need to improve our infrastructure, we need to improve our roadways, and our bridges certainly need a lot of attention. So I'm going to applaud our governor for giving this issue a lot of attention. We're working very closely together. She had put forth the proposal. To her credit, she's a new governor. The proposal came a little late in the session for us to be able to act upon it. I heard from a lot of small businesses that are concerned with the economic impact that significant tolling on trucks would have. We don't want to divert business from our small businesses. Some people look at it from a trucking viewpoint only. It's not a trucking viewpoint. You want to make sure your retailers and manufacturers have the business that they traditionally have, that trucks are willing to go to them. Companies from out of state have to be willing to go to them. And if you put too large a toll between that truck and that manufacturer, they can potentially find manufacturers in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and other places. And those are issues that were brought to my attention. So we're currently studying the economic impact of that. But I've committed that I recognize the problem. I applaud our governor for attacking the problem. And she's been a great partner. We're working very well together with the governor, the Senate president. And we're going to come up with a proposal that best serves our economy, our constituents, and continues to move Rhode Island forward. But let me just say this, Joe. I agree our roads need a lot of attention and our bridges need a lot of work, and there's no question that we have to address that. But I go to a lot of other states and their infrastructure also needs a lot of attention, and their bridges also need a lot of work. This is a national problem. We don't get as much federal highway money as we used to. The gas tax yields less money because our cars are smaller. We don't burn as many gallons of gasoline. We net less in the gas tax at a time, we yield less at a time when all of the materials cost a lot more. Highway construction costs more than it did before. So that's a recipe for a shortfall, and it creates challenges. Those challenges are being created all over the country, not just Rhode Island. We just have to be very proactive, thoughtful, and come up with a solution. And I'm very pleased that I have great partners in government, and we have a very dynamic, proactive governor. And we're going to attack these challenges, and we're going to come up with good solutions for our citizens.
Speaker, one of the things that during the course of the years where we've worked together, yourself when you were a majority leader, was your perspective on and analyzing legislation. And it's something that I know you always looked at legislation for what are the unintended consequences that could develop if this legislation was enacted. And I think that some of your outreach and analysis has reflected that, especially as our economy is recovering. We wouldn't want to do anything which would slow that particular recovery. So that economic analysis is very important. And I know we had a conversation about a company that distributes chemicals in New England, pool chemicals. And their conversation was that if this toll is enacted, it could affect the businesses that they're going for their supplies and go to out-of-state businesses rather than in-state businesses. It certainly was an eye-opener for me, but I'm very aware of the fact that we don't want to do anything at this time that will stymie our economic recovery.
Absolutely, Joe. What I learned, referring to that particular situation you were referring to, most big companies have trucks in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and other states all simultaneously. So, and there's manufacturers for certain products in all of these states. So if there's a toll between their truck and the Rhode Island manufacturer in Rhode Island, it's just as easy for them to divert that business to the Massachusetts truck with the Massachusetts manufacturer. And that's something that we have to be very cautious about encouraging. So those issues were brought to my attention. They got my attention, and we're being very thoughtful on how we move forward.
Well, I think I applaud you certainly for that approach, and the feedback that I've received from my constituents has been very positive regarding that pragmatic approach. Mr. Speaker, everyone's talking about the poor Sox. You know, they tried to hit something out of the park, but I think that it was very, very poorly received initially. What's happening in your eyes with that, the Poor Sox deal,
Joe,
the stadium?
First, let me say, Joe, the original proposal was something that everybody agrees was not in the state's or the taxpayers' best interest. We all said that right out of the gate, and since then, the approach that I've taken is I believe that the Poor Sox are part of our social fabric. Rhode Island is like having the Poor Sox, one of 30 AAA teams in the state of Rhode Island. We're proud to have them in the state of Rhode Island. And ultimately, I think most Rhode Islanders want them to stay in Rhode Island. I think they'd like them to stay in Pawtucket, but I've been informed that that model doesn't work anymore. So if that doesn't work anymore, we have to look at alternatives. I've been a person that's tried to keep the train on the tracks. Let's try to get a better proposal. Let's try to get one that's in the taxpayers' best interest in light of the bad original proposal. And we've been in discussions constantly. I answer questions with the press almost every week, and lately there hasn't been much change in where we are. We have new terms that have been discussed. I haven't signed off on the terms. The governor has not signed off on the terms. There's still a lot of things that we have to do. There are regulatory challenges, engineering challenges, and so forth. But ultimately, the terms that we've been discussing are much, much better than they were. I believe they're in the taxpayers' best interest. I've insisted that whatever deal we go forward with is at least revenue neutral. And let me explain what I mean by that. It's like a business. You have expenses, you have revenues, right within the four corners of the ballpark. The expenses have to be less than the revenues that the ballpark generates for the state of Rhode Island. If that's the case, I would say that's revenue neutral. I'm looking for revenue positive. If we can get there and have the ballpark generate a positive cash flow for the taxpayers and serve as a catalyst for the entire downtown area, our capital city, I think that could be a catalyst for the state of Rhode Island. That certainly would encourage investment in the I-195 land that's opened up. So I think a lot of good things can happen there if we're all patient enough to make sure we get a good deal,
right.
Make sure it's in the taxpayers' best interest. And let me say this. I'm just going to say there's been an analogy drawn to 38 Studios and all of that. We've learned our lessons from 38 Studios. I've been very methodical on how we go forward with big proposals. The Poor Sox are not a gamble. They're not a Hail Mary pass. They've been here for a number of years. They're a great corporate citizen. They're connected with the Red Sox. The owners have a lot of resources. They're going to be here long after all of us are no longer here. So it's not a Hail Mary pass or a gamble. What we have to make sure, and there's no analogy to, it is a public-private partnership, but there's no analogy to 38 Studios whatsoever that I can draw. So what we have to make sure is that it's a good deal for the taxpayers, and we're going to insist upon that. If it is, and the taxpayers agree upon that, they're going to be a partner in this discussion, then we'll go forward. If the taxpayers are not interested, we don't have to go forward. So I just want to make sure that we fully consider and vet the idea before we do anything.
Mr. Speaker, I spoke with one of my colleagues, a representative from Warwick last night, relating to this, and he called and he said, geez, Joe, our names are on this list on some website as supporting the Poor Sox deal. And I said, that is inaccurate in my eyes, and certainly for him, and most of the representatives that are on there did not support, like the citizens of the state, that first deal that came forward. And I'm glad that you mentioned the Poor Sox have, if they have a new deal that's coming forward, when that is articulated, the citizens of this state have to support that initiative?
Absolutely. The website you're referring to, Joe, is totally inaccurate. First of all, I ask anybody, what are you for and what are you against? There's no proposal. So all of the representatives that we've talked to, whether they were listed for or against, indicated nobody contacted them. So that website's totally inaccurate, and I wouldn't expect anyone to have an opinion, including myself, until and unless we know what the proposal is.
Right.
At some point, the proposal is good enough that you have to support it, but until it's good enough that you have to support it, you should not support it. So I would not ask for anybody's opinion until I knew the terms of what I was asking their opinion relative to.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if any suggestions that we have, one suggestion that I would have for any Porsac Stadium that was being developed in downtown Providence is certainly we have our Little League championships there, and I know that I would love to go downtown in Providence and see the National Little League champion, both for the girls and the boys. And with that being said, Mr. Speaker, last Saturday, you traveled down to, was it Williamsport?
Yes, actually it was Friday.
It was Friday.
To South Williamsport, Pennsylvania. We drove out there, me and 3 friends, early that morning, and we drove back that evening. It was a lot of driving, but it was a great game, very exciting place. The Little League is great. They're very excited to play. It's a great opportunity for them. I'm very proud of, I got to give a shout out to Cranston Weston Little League. They're great. Mike Verrato is a long past president. He's now deceased. The kids played their hearts out for him, and a wonderful coach that we have, Gary Bucci, Jim Demers. They all did a great job. You know, Cranston, I'm fortunate. We have a great community. We have a great Little League. The kids were phenomenal. A great team. It was just very exciting to be there. I loved it. But a lot of driving for one day, Joe.
Yeah, 14 hours in total. That's quite a trip, and certainly to be dedicated for that. And we had the Warwick North girls softball, who finished second in the world. No small accomplishment. And Mr. Speaker, as someone who has sponsored Little League teams for 30 years now, starting in Cranston with my first ice cream shop, I think it really speaks to the quality of not only students and youth we have in our state, but the quality of coaching. Our volunteer coaches are above and beyond what I've seen elsewhere in the United States.
Joe, the commitment is unbelievable. I mentioned Gary Bucci, Jim Demers. I'm sorry I forgot Larry Lepore. I mean, these gentlemen dedicate their entire summer to these kids, and the kids are wonderful. They dedicate their entire summer. I think they have double practices. They work hard. Cranston Western Little Leaguers, you made Rhode Island and Cranston very, very proud. You did a great job. I enjoyed the games. I went to Bristol and to Pennsylvania. I enjoyed both games. Unfortunately, the games I went to see, they didn't win. They had tough draws and their first games out there, but they came back. They're very resilient. They're fighters. They're very talented ball players. And the coaching, the dedication, everybody as a community comes together. It's wonderful to see. It's great to be part of.
Well, it's interesting, Mr. Speaker, and my Joe's Dairy Shop Little League team, at a very early age, the kids get live pitches. They were not big into T-ball, and I was always very pleased with my team, and the kids would come up after the game and they'd say, is it true if we win, we get free ice cream? And I said, no, it is not. You get free ice cream whether you win or lose. You go out there, try and have a good time, and you'll always get a free ice cream cone after the game. So Rhode Island just has a tremendous tradition, and I think it really speaks to the core values of our state. Mr. Speaker, I certainly want to thank you for joining us today, and I would invite our listeners to contact the Rhode Island Democratic Party. Our next show, Mr. Speaker, is going to be about the delegate selection plan for the 2016 Democratic Convention, in which we will be voting and choosing I believe, the next president of the United States. So certainly I would urge our viewers to contact the Rhode Island Democratic Party. We will be traveling around the state from Woonsocket to Westerly, holding presentations and conferences at City Hall, trying to get people involved. So with that, for today, Mr. Speaker, thanks again. And I will say to our viewers, thank you for watching today. And please, get involved. This is your government, and we are working for you. Thank you.